All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely shatter those perfect, pristine marble statues you see in museums. You know the ones. We're going to get to know the actual, remarkably human, brilliant, and honestly pretty flawed men who built a nation from the ground up.
So here's a wild thought for you. Would Thomas Jefferson win an election today? Well, I'll tell you right now, the answer is a resounding no. And we are going to explore exactly why that is. We're going to subvert everything you thought you knew about these historical icons and draw a direct line from their world right into our modern political landscape.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, beyond the marble statues. Then, Franklin, the relentless innovator, followed by Washington, the quiet commander, and Jefferson, the complex intellectual. After that, religion and modern politics, and finally, leadership lessons for today. Let's get started.
Section 1. Beyond the Marble Statues, Humanizing America's Founders.
Section 2. Franklin, the relentless innovator, also known as the entrepreneurial showman.
Okay, Benjamin Franklin was, without a doubt, America's first true Renaissance man. The sheer variety of his inventions proves he wasn't just some politician in a wig. He was a relentless tinkerer and a massive community builder. I mean, just think about his resume. He invented bifocal glasses. He created this mesmerizing musical instrument called the glass harmonica, literally using 12 water-filled bowls spinning on a spindle. Who thinks of that? Beyond the science, he launched the very first American franchise system for print shops, he helped found public lending libraries, and even started a volunteer firehouse. And honestly, my personal favorite, at just 16 years old, he used a fake female name, Silence Dogood, just so he could secretly get his writing published in his older brother's newspaper. Talk about hustle.
And you know, this entrepreneurial spirit is brilliantly illustrated by his time as a young guy working in a London print shop. Back then, the city water was, well, it was filthy, completely filled with disease. So his coworkers just drank beer all day long. Naturally, that made them sluggish and way less productive. Franklin, though, he simply boiled his water to make it safe. That one little trick allowed him to stay healthy, sober, and incredibly productive. He was literally running circles around his beer-drinking peers.
So the really crucial point here is how Franklin viewed his early retirement. He stepped away from the printing business at age 40, but he didn't see it as a time to just kick back and relax. Not at all. He saw it as a blank check to dedicate the entire rest of his long life to science and society. He never stopped. He actively worked to improve the lives of everybody around him, helping to forge a brand new nation well into his 90s.
Moving on to Section 3. Washington, the quiet commander, and the power of restraint.
Now with George Washington, we find a completely different kind of power. It's really fascinating. He stood out at an imposing 6 feet tall, which in an era of generally shorter men was huge. But when it was time to select a general for the new Continental Army, he didn't give some booming, table-pounding speech. No, he silently lobbied for the position simply by showing up to the convention already wearing his old military uniform. It was brilliant. He had this incredible, almost magnetic ability to build consensus without ever having to yell over a room full of powerful alpha males. Yet, behind the scenes, he was fiercely dedicated, tirelessly lobbying the Continental Congress to squeeze out funds for his, quite literally, shoeless soldiers.
And this quiet authority, it builds directly into his absolute greatest legacy, his unprecedented surrenders of power. In 1775, he's appointed general. Fast forward to 1783, after winning the war, he goes to the Maryland State House in Annapolis and he voluntarily resigns his military commission. Think about that. Unlike conquering generals throughout world history who used their armies to crown themselves kings, he just handed the power right back to the people. He stunned the entire globe by voluntarily surrendering that immense power not just once, but twice, stepping down again in 1797 after totally refusing to run for a third presidential term.
Next up, Section 4. Jefferson, the complex intellectual, and the shy philosopher.
So while Thomas Jefferson was drafting the literal blueprints of American freedom, he was also an incredibly complex guy who guarded his personal life fiercely. Despite authoring the Declaration of Independence, he was a painfully shy public speaker. He hated it. And he was so intensely private that after his beloved wife died, he burned all of their correspondence so no one else would ever read it. But kind of like Franklin, he was a total tinkerer. To keep up with his massive volume of writing, he invented an early photocopier using connected rods. It would automatically copy his handwritten letters onto a second sheet of paper exactly as he wrote them. He was also this avid agricultural experimenter, constantly playing around with crop rotations and even installing a mechanical dumbwaiter in his home at Monticello.
Now, intellectually, his greatest contribution was advocating for our specific system of government.
And it's really essential we define this properly, because Jefferson and the founders didn't build a pure democracy where the 51% majority just rules absolutely everything. Instead, they build a representative republic. He specifically designed this system to protect your individual liberties and your pursuit of happiness against the unchecked, absolute power of a pure majority. Looking at his actual presidency, Jefferson achieved an expansion of massive, truly unprecedented scale. He multiplied the physical size of the young country by 2.
And you know what the most remarkable part of that is? He did it with a single stroke of a pen. Instead of using war and shedding blood to conquer new territory, this studious, quiet philosopher doubled the size of the nation simply by negotiating a brilliant real estate deal, the Louisiana Purchase. He secured massive amounts of land for literally pennies on the dollar.
All right, Section 5, Religion in Modern Politics, from 1800 to today.
Let's start here with a phrase we hear absolutely all the time. The crucial takeaway is that Jefferson's famous phrase about the separation of church and state wasn't actually about banishing faith from public life entirely. He originally coined this phrase in a letter to the Danbury Baptists. His goal? He was specifically clarifying that the government simply cannot create or force a single state-sanctioned religious denomination onto the American people.
But man, oh man, how times have changed since then. Looking at these two eras really highlights a fascinating shift. The very founder who authored the Declaration of Independence, he could likely never survive a modern election cycle today, specifically because of his skepticism of organized religion. Think about 1800. Jefferson actually won the presidency despite opponents aggressively attacking him as an essential atheist because he didn't believe in the divinity of Jesus. Now, compare that to today. Modern candidates are practically required to showcase strong faith to win. For example, in the 2016 race, Hillary Clinton actively bonded with a voter in a bakery over Bible passages just to help earn his support.
It's a fact that modern voters consistently demand to know the religious convictions of their leaders, and that's a standard that has steadily grown over the last few decades. In 2008, Barack Obama's ties to his pastor were heavily scrutinized. In 2012, Mitt Romney's Mormonism caused some unease among voters. And by 2016, candidates across the board were widely using faith as a primary tool to connect with the electorate. Today, a candidate's religious life is just an indispensable, heavily monitored element of running for public office.
Finally, Section 6, Leadership Lessons for Today, Applying History to the Present.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, whether it's Franklin's relentless drive to never stop innovating and learning, regardless of your age, or Washington's quiet authority, proving that you really don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to build consensus, and that true power is knowing exactly when to step away from it. Or maybe it's Jefferson's intellectual deal-making, reminding us to study widely and look for those diplomatic stroke-of-a-pen victories. There is a specific, powerful strategy here for absolutely any modern leader to adopt. And Franklin's famous words brilliantly illustrate the ultimate lesson from these beautifully flawed men, the absolute necessity of unity and compromise. As he famously and kinda darkly warned during the drafting of the Declaration, if they didn't figure out a way to work together despite all their differences, they would literally all face the hangman's noose. So, I'm going to leave you with a provocative thought to consider as we look to the past to figure out how to guide our future. Which of these leadership styles, the relentless innovator, the quiet consensus builder, or the intellectual deal maker, do we need the most right now? Thank you so much for exploring history with me on this explainer. And as always, keep learning.